The message we must send loud and clear is that now is the time to make serious reflections and get China-U.S. relations back onto the right track. That's what Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang said at the Asia Society last Thursday in his 5,000-word speech on China-U.S. relations. During his stay in the United States to attend the 77th session of the UN General Assembly, he has expounded on this topic on several occasions. During his statement at the General Assembly, he also called for making every effort for peace and development and shouldering the responsibility for solidarity and progress. What specific messages has China sent to the U.S. through Wang Yi's trip? How have these messages gone down? I'm pleased to be joined from Washington, D.C. by Rick Dunham, former White House correspondent for Business Week, and from Beijing by Wang Huiyao, president of the Center for China and Globalization, a prestigious think tank. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Wang Yi addressed the general debate at the 77th UN General Assembly, saying we must uphold peace and oppose war and turbulence. He said we must pursue development and eliminate poverty. We must remain open and oppose exclusion. We must stay engaged in cooperation and oppose confrontation. And we must strengthen solidarity and oppose division. We must uphold equity and oppose bullying. Rick, what do you think is his saying telling the world about China's priorities or stance?
Well, I think the words and the principles that he addressed can't really be debated. Who is against peace? Who is against cooperation? The challenge that he faces really are multiple. One is that we don't have peace in Ukraine. There was a Russian invasion, and there are massacres and war crimes, and it's really hard. China is caught in the middle of that. And then the other is that there are unilateral actions, like the United States with the trade war that Donald Trump started and that has not abated yet, and other things that they get in the way of sort of this idea. The principles that he addresses that are admirable and that are hard for people to disagree with.
That aside, Mr. Wang Yi also singled out the Taiwan question on various occasions, and here's what he said. Let's take a listen.
The One China principle has become a basic norm in international relations and a general consensus of the international community. Only by resolutely forestalling in accordance with the law separatist activities can forge a true foundation for peaceful reunification. Only when China is completely reunified can there be enduring peace across the Taiwan Strait.
So this was a centerpiece, a very important message that he made throughout his stay in the United States on various occasions during his meeting with, for instance, the famous Henry Kissinger, or with his U.S. counterpart, Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Mr. Wang Huiyao, why does China have to reiterate this matter again and again and again?
Yeah, thank you, Liu Xin. And I think this time the Foreign Minister and State Councilor Wang Yi's visit to the United Nations, attending the General Assembly, is very significant. It's actually since the pandemic, for the last 3 years, we have a Chinese top official physically visit the U.S. And he's not only actually talking to the United Nations, and also he's meeting the business community, meeting old China veteran like Dr. Kissinger, but he's also made a very comprehensive and very long speech at Asia Society.
Right.
So not only talking to the government, but also to the public as well. I think that it's really giving such a complexity and giving such a geopolitical tension that we're having now, given that Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, I think it's really high time a senior official of China goes to U.S. and speak publicly and with government and with everybody to really set out clear Chinese objectives and positions. So this is very, very clear and very comprehensive and very actually reasonable and very, very convincing that China wants to make peace, wants to safeguard, world multilateral system, wants to talk with U.S. and wants to maintain the global governance as it is. But also, actually, he's meeting the foreign minister of Ukraine and everybody. So it shows that China is very positively making contribution to the world stability and the future economy of the world.
Yeah, let's also not forget there was this very important meeting, which is a sideline event about a group of friends to the Global Development Initiative, which is highly praised by the United Nations and the various agencies that are dedicated to development. But again, we're focusing on U.S.-China relations. As we have discussed, Rick, Mr. Wang Yi had a very busy schedule. He met with various leaders. He talked on various occasions. He met with U.S. organizations such as the U.S.-China Committee on U.S.-China Relations, U.S.-China Business Council, U.S. Chamber of Commerce. What do you think he's trying to achieve by doing all of this?
Well, I think it's important because, as we all know, the relationship has been in the deep freeze for several years, and these are leading organizations, non-government organizations in the United States that have influence over policymakers. And I think that the idea is Wang Yi is the most persuasive Chinese government official in communicating with an American audience. And I think that he communicates in a way that Americans understand. He uses language that is accessible.
Do you think his messages have been heeded?
I think that
Do you think his messages have been heeded well? Have gone down well?
No, I think they've been heard well, but I don't. I think that I think what's important for him is to let American policymakers know how seriously China takes these certain issues. I don't think that he's changing any minds on Taiwan. I think the United States and China have to agree to disagree for the time being, and on other issues such as trade and international cooperation. I think that it's good to say that you are in favor of improving relations. I think that what we need is concrete results. I think we need higher level meetings. We need the presidents of the two countries to meet and then start having some deliverables. I think that's when the relations would change. Right now, he is laying the groundwork for it.
Yeah, but the thing is,
in 1971.
Mr. Wang Huiyao here, I think the thing is, the presidents of both countries have met several times, and China has a problem with what is being said during these heads of state meetings and not being implemented on the ground. It's almost like, you turn around and you forget what you're saying. Does China have a sense of speaking to a wall? That's why Mr. Wang Yi actually used the word that, the message we must send loud and clear is that now is the time to make serious reflections and get back onto the right track. Actually, when translated into Chinese, it is 大喝一声, literally meaning a loud yell. Is China really having the sense of desperation or helplessness that the messages is just not being heard, heeded?
Well, I think this is really the high time. It's really the critical time that China top diplomats actually express such a strong voice in the General Assembly of the UN annual meeting. But also that, he has, Wang Yi has met so many extensively with all kinds of, people that in this China-U.S. related. It's a society with community, as you mentioned. But also, I think the message has gone down. He used a lot of examples, a lot of data, a lot of statistics. It's much more convincing and much more wide impact. So I think that kind of paved the way for the future high-level talk like G20 probably coming up that top leaders may meet between the U.S. and China. So I think this visit is quite significant. That actually paved the way for.
But how do you look at the use of language here? This 大喝一声, that is making headlines. The Chinese translation did make a lot of headlines, Mr. Wang.
Yeah, I think this is really very, very critical that he was, like shouting loudly, and it's a big reminder. And let's really not, we are at the cliff now. We are having the critical lowest point of our relations. Let's really stop there. Let's come to the common sense and the common understanding, and then really make some common gestures to work really stabilize the relation. I think that's what he wants.
So the urgency of the situation. But Mr. Wang, you made a tour of the an extensive one just recently. Tell us about your impressions very briefly. Do you think there is still hope on the different levels? I mean, things are not as bad as it seems on the headlines.
Absolutely, I think this is really critical that we meet face to face. That's so well. I think Minister Wang can meet so many people face to face now for almost 3 years. He's meeting, like U.S.-China Business Council and Steering Committee of the National Committee, and also U.S. General Chamber. I met all of them too, but I found that if we meet them face to face, there's a lot of clarification. There's a lot of body language and facial expressions that can be really understood. Those small talks are so important to pave the way for the big talks at the high level. We need those small talks and then personal private meetings. So I'm extremely pleased to see that for Mr. Wang, he has done all those extensively for a whole week, that meeting so many parties and so many stakeholders of China-U.S. relations, and also appealing to the international community. Let's have a reasonable, stable relation. Let's work for shoulder the responsibility for the world and for all the burning issues that really plague in the world, rather than we're obsessed with geopolitical and regional and also Taiwan issues. So this is a very important message he's sending to everybody. And that's, I found the same thing in my trip too. Everybody wants to talk, everybody wants to meet, and let's build on that momentum.
Yeah. Rick, do you share also a sense of cautious optimism that there is hope that things may improve?
Yes, I could not agree more with what we just heard, and I think that it is very important to have these in-person discussions. It's good that we're moving past the pandemic and the separation of the two countries in terms of having the person-to-person relations. I also think it is good to have public disagreements and frank discussions, not just niceties. But I do think it will be hard and slow to make fixes, because both sides are going to have to make some compromises. I mean, there are principles that the two sides will not compromise on, but there are certain things that can be compromised on, particularly business related and economic related.
Okay.
And so I think we should focus again on what brings the countries together, rather than for the last few years when we focused on the things that separate the two countries.
All right. We have to leave it there. Many thanks to Rick Dunham, former White House correspondent for Business Week, and Wang Huiyao, president of the Center for China and Globalization. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, U.S. President Joe Biden says the pandemic is over in the United States. Is that really the case? We'll find out.